does all sorts of wacky things, like
hippies.
income tax and, you know.
They're all dirty hippies over there.
Yeah. Sales tax.
Have we started recording yet?
Oh, shoot.
Not Mike.
Phil says.
Yeah, just allowed non-town residents to serve on planning boards too in Vermont.
Really?
Last year, that was passed. They were just so many small towns with
didn't
empty
have-
planning boards.
Oh,
You're
interesting.
kidding.
Yeah,
Wow.
find
That's
another
actually
way.
amazing.
I need to think through that for a little bit.
Interesting.
And we just had a hullabaloo because there was a state rep and selectman who was living out of district who
Yeah.
got booted, and
Yeah.
like, it's kind of curious, like, did they count how many votes in the House were decided by a margin of one?
I wonder.
It was a substantial
busy
number.
doing busy work.
Are there laws against taking money to be on the planning board?
School, talking
You could be a
to
planning board member for
residents,
hire and just like work on a whole
Is
bunch.
that I was gonna, oh, I see, I thought.
Still helping
It'd be like a new job.
Why were you,
Yeah.
why were you making eye contact with the engineer when you said that?
Yeah.
Nobody up there.
Oh,
Not one
boy.
person.
Sorry, we're having fun here. Hope you don't mind.
From Vermont, actually.
Yeah.
Doesn't want to be
So can I do that?
Okay, help me for 5 minutes.
Oh, my
2
gosh.
hours later.
I hit you twice, didn't I?
Business, say your managers or directors, if you don't know about permitting, occupancy permits, the network. Yeah, I said, go back to Steve and tell him you need me as a consultant. So you guys will have me come up 2 or 3 times a week. I can't keep doing it, and I don't want to be a jerk.
3, 4, 5.
If you're paying hundreds of thousands of dollars for all these employees, you guys could pay consultant fees for me.
You aren't kidding.
Mike's usually a right on time guy, but actually we're late now, aren't
He
we?
breezes in right
Yeah.
about now. Right.
So they were doing all this work outside.
Do I say that every time?
You don't actually.
Okay.
The buildings.
I think-
I heard from Mark.
Peter's
Mark
on
said,
long
Mark
term.
said he's not coming.
Oh, I must have missed that one.
I thought you replied to him.
Any permits.
Oh, that's
Like,
it.
it was like a week ago though. Like
Oh.
he replied right away.
Listen, you're gonna
I don't doubt it.
I think this is the first time I've been here in like 6 weeks, so I missed
so
a
nobody
couple.
put any permits, so guess what?
That wasn't a thought.
Fire chief,
I know Neil is out
Yeah,
of
I both
town.
missed out, and I had
big fire truck was up there, the ambulance fire truck there, Scott Whedon was up there.
It'd be fun if
went
the
up there
doors
today.
rattled a little bit.
I didn't call him. Kept on down.
All right. Well,
Nope.
It's a room if you want to move up. You're happy there.
it is 6:31.
No, John's not long ago, got fired.
Gavel.
3 weeks ago, got fired.
And I will call our October 19th Planning Board meeting to order. And I'll begin by reading the roll. John Christ, present. Rebecca,
I'm here.
Phil,
Present.
Neil,
Nope.
not absent. Mike Ahern. Mark is excused this evening. And Susan Wood.
Yep.
And alternate members, Zach Terrell from the Select Board, Michael Bouchard,
Present.
and Peter Julia. So, Michael, I will seat you as a voting member this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So, up next, the review of minutes from our October 5th meeting.
I'm still flabbergasted by the 125% parking requirement.
I can't believe all this stuff. I thought last time we were walking through the neighborhood.
Good when the minutes give you a shuffle.
All right, good. I just think I missed
Yeah, but they're
something.
just talking about our existing ordinance.
It's our ordinance that's giving you the shuffle.
Yes. I will be refraining from making motions on the minutes.
As will I.
Make a motion to approve the minutes from October 5th.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
I
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
abstain.
I abstain.
Right, so the minutes are approved. Okay. Have there been communications received, Joseph?
Yes, there have been a number of communications received, all related to later cases on the agenda, but we do have some updated correspondence from the applicant on the first boundary line adjustment regarding the first waiver request. We have an update on the second boundary line adjustment from Slater Holdings LLC, which is a waiver request as well as the updated application form. And we have on the site plan review, they received drainage calculations, operation and maintenance plan, and an AOT submittal for the last site plan. And those are the items in your packet that have a blue flag on them, the new items. That's, we have a few pieces, but we can also cover them in more detail when we get to the review of applications.
All right, thank you.
How organized, thank you.
So, up next, we have applications and public hearings. The first one being a boundary line adjustment. And so, we have a boundary line adjustment between PID 220-032-002 and 220-032-003 at 113 Chatteron Lane. And this is in the single-family residential zone. And so just a few pieces of information just for everyone here, just general process. So we'll start by looking at the application and determining whether it's complete and whether we can accept it as complete, and then turn to, if we get that far, a discussion of a approval and a public hearing. So would the applicant like to speak to this boundary line adjustment and present basic information to the board?
Yeah, so,
Thank you. Welcome.
so we've gotten a survey done, and so it's proven the actual encroachment, and then we actually went ahead, instead of having the survey just prove our lot line, we decided to jump ahead and actually get the adjustment survey done. So that's what we're actually submitting today with the actual lot section .15 that's going to get shifted from my lot to be the Barnum's lot, which is 113 Chatteron. So that's kind of what we're submitting for. And so the front, just so to make everything a lot clearer, the front boundary corner is not being changed. What's happened is the encroachment starts up in the driveway somewhere. So working with the surveyor, we all decided mutually that we'd want a little bit of a buffer. We wouldn't want zero against the driveway. So we actually added a little bit of, land. I forgot exactly what the amount is, but it skews out from there. So like the utilities, I have a existing sewer tie-in, right? That doesn't get affected at all because it's pretty much right near the road, and where we're adjusting is back a little ways. So I believe that's probably going to come up as a point of discussion too.
So the tie-in is on the eastern end of your frontage then?
It's about, I forget exactly the dimension, but it's about 15 feet off of where the existing front corner line is, and so we're starting on the existing boundary corner, and we're kind of taking off from there and skewing a little bit, but it's still pretty close to the same dimensions.
And the two new bounds are both set?
Yeah, so all 4 property corners on my lot have been done, which means that the front and the back, and there's actually
looks like
there's
3.
there's a third pin, right? Because there's an angle there.
Yep.
Yeah.
One along the stone wall at the southern boundary, and then 2 interior along that line.
Exactly.
I believe there are some waivers, is that correct?
Yeah, so we went through the whole list. It's kind of like the list. From what we could tell, there was a lot of stuff in there because it's kind of a generic, I guess, application for a whole bunch of different things, not just plot line adjustments. But there was a lot of things that didn't apply because we're literally 2 approved lots, right? We're not changing the front corner. We're changing we're sectioning off what's been encroached plus a little bit extra buffer, leaving my lot well within buildable size of 0.88. And so that's kind of what we're doing.
So I imagine many of these will probably make sense. I think that I just counted 17 of them. So the board probably should look through these and just make sure we're all okay with those.
Sure, yeah.
And do we have any other questions right now?
Is there an existing driveway on your parcel?
No, there's nothing built on my driveway. A lot of trees.
Yeah. So, drilled well.
Yes.
I'm a little concerned about the location of the well. It would appear that even though it's an existing well, the fact that this plan will be updated, I would think that we might at least want to show the 75-foot well radius. I'm trying to remember if a well radius, an easement or release is required if it crosses property boundaries, but this one appears to.
Oh, for the, okay.
It would appear to cross the property boundary both to the south and to the parcel to the west.
Well, to the south presumably would be an existing condition.
Right, but it's still,
Well, it's,
the well radius was drilled, the well was drilled after, and I mean, if this is kind of a, the most recent recording of this plot, should it not be shown?
I
Yeah,
get that,
yeah.
and at the same time, I wonder, if anything is happening here, it's becoming less of an issue and less out of conformity,
Well,
if there is.
It's less of an issue between these two parties, but the party to the south actually.
I mean, the purpose of the wellhead protection area
Protect them.
is to make sure there's space for well and or septic if needed,
Yep.
in a
There's no septic.
subdivision.
Yeah.
I don't think that this, especially the southern boundary, I don't think that this really, the well exists.
No one's going to develop back there. There's like that. Those properties have like a huge buffer. The ones that are right behind us.
I mean,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
regardless, there are lots that exist, there are lots of records, so,
Yeah.
we still have to follow the rules, but I'm just thinking about, this well exists, the property to the south, it's really not the boundary line in question, and really the conditions aren't, the only thing that's different is there's a little more space to the
Mhm.
west.
Which would make it less of an issue anyway.
Right.
Yeah,
So-
all right.
But that was already, like, the well was already dug. It was actually on my property. That's why we're changing, that's part of the
Right.
reason why we moved it the way we did. But, so I'm trying to figure out why would we be revisiting that if it was approved and it was already positioned that way for the south property before.
I think we're just trying to talk it through.
Yep.
Okay,
I
yeah,
personally
yeah.
don't see a
Yeah.
problem with it, but still, it's worth talking through.
Sure.
It,
Yeah.
it was a discussion point.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Um, Are we okay with the waiver requests?
I'm okay with the waiver requests. I would make a motion that we accept the application as complete.
Second.
Any further discussion? Okay, so we have a motion and a second to accept the application as complete. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, it's accepted as complete.
I think I forgot to say aye, but
All right. So, now we can move on to discussing approval and looking a bit more into details and having eventually a public hearing as well. Do we have any further questions as we move into the next stage of looking at this application? I will remind everyone, one of the things we'll have to do is findings of fact and look at, I guess, mostly dimensional requirements.
Mhm.
I think this is a pretty straightforward case of sort of fixing a situation that exists. And it's great that everyone's amenable to it. It's not a finding of fact, that's just my
No,
opinion.
Thank you. And legally, we do have to do findings of fact. So, let's see. We are in the single-family residential, and our minimum lot size on water and sewer would be a half acre, and we're on
Sewer.
sewer would be a half acre. And it looks like both lots are, remain above that.
Mhm. As stated on the notes, the lots are served by municipal sewage, and the minimum acreage for parcels in this zone served by municipal sewer is 0.5 acres. It's in the single-family residential zone. Setbacks are shown.
I will find that the minimum frontage in this zone is 100 feet, and we have frontage at 196 and 388 feet. And in fact, we didn't change the frontage
True.
anyway, because you used the existing corners. We made the buildings more conforming than they previously were,
Mhm.
the existing structures.
Mhm.
We're doing findings, right?
Yes.
All of the departments have reviewed them and don't have any issues. Fire, police, building.
Mhm.
And Plymouth Village Water and Sewer did mention the utilities and where they're located, which we have discussed at this point. Okay. Any further discussion? You do.
Public hearing?
Oh, public hearing, thank you. I almost forgot. So it is 6:48, and I will open the public hearing. Does anybody have anything you'd like to add to this discussion? So please come up to the podium. Okay. In that case, it is still 6:48, and I will close the public hearing. Thank you for the reminder, Phil.
I'll move that we approve the boundary line adjustment as presented.
Second.
Is there any further discussion?
With the 3 finding of facts that we've already listed.
Mhm.
Yeah. All right. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, the application is approved. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And just a reminder to provide a Mylar for recording and necessary fees to Joseph in the offices.
Sounds good.
Right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
What an example of working together. That's great. Thank you.
Makes sense.
It's a lot easier.
The way they all should be.
Easier than moving the house on the well?
Again, looked at the whole building.
That was touching.
My wife and I looked at that house.
All right.
That house.
So up next, we have another boundary line adjustment, and this is in fact related to the site plan review, which is also on our agenda for this evening. So the boundary line adjustment. So we will be looking at these separately. So this is Slater Holdings and Doreen Tillotson, Rosalie Pendley, and Pine Gate Cooperative. So this is a boundary line adjustment that would decrease the size of parcel 207076 and increase parcels 208068, 208070, and 208071, resulting in parcels of approximately 15.60, 14.77, 1.08, and 1.08 acres on Fairgrounds Road, Beach Hill Road, Hutchins Road, and Pine Gate Road. The proposal also includes elimination of Hutchins Road right-of-way. These properties lie in the agricultural zoning district. So just like our previous application, we will first talk about acceptance and any potential waivers, and then, should that go through, move to the approval process. Would the applicant like to speak to this proposal?
Sure. My name is Will Davis. I'm with Horizons Engineering. I think most of us know each other. Here tonight representing Slater Holdings. Colby Coombs is online, and Chris Shaka, the operations manager, is here as well. So I don't know. I mean, this one is fairly straightforward, I guess. Do you want me to go through, why we're doing it and
A little bit of background.
Okay, sure. Yeah. So I think I got paper, but I think I'll just use this. So essentially what they would like to do is rectify a few encroachments by abutting landowners onto the subject parcel. So the large piece that you see is the Slater Holdings parcel, and there are 2 hatched areas. Go here and this strip here that they're proposing to basically deed over to the abutting landowners to deal with some structures that are over the line, essentially. So the 2 1-acre lots on the west have a 15-foot strip that's being added to those properties, and then at the north end, it's a little bit more of an irregular shape, as you can see. The other the other part of the boundary line adjustment that was mentioned in the intro by John is that we would propose a condition of approval that a lot merger be executed, which would eliminate the lot lines that are interior to the property now. So there was, at the original approval, there was a road proposed with a cul-de-sac that had this 1 acre lot in the northeast corner, which they would like to eliminate and to create a single lot with a point of access on Fairgrounds Road as well as a right-of-way access on Pine Gate Road. We did request a waiver. If you'd like me to go over that.
Yes, please.
Okay. So this was something that Joseph pointed out to us, so I apologize it was a little bit late in getting to you today, but we have it. And essentially we need a waiver from the requirement to show property lines and dimensions on the 3 parcels that are being adjusted, as well as existing utilities on those parcels. So we didn't complete full boundary retracement on the 3 parcels. You know, the lot lines of the 2 1 acre are shown on our plan, obviously. The one to the north is larger. It's, I think, 14 or 15 acres. And so because those 3 lots are becoming larger, New Hampshire land surveyor rules don't require that to be shown as part of the plan. Essentially, the plan could be recorded as is. We've defined the boundary for the lines that are being adjusted, and you know the landowners have agreed to it as presented. So we request that you waive that requirement, as it would require a good bit more work on our part to define the boundaries of those other 3 parcels. The other thing is the existing utilities, which I think, as you kind of touched on in the previous case, is my understanding is the intent of showing those is to make sure that we're not making any setbacks worse, essentially, for things like wells and septic and other utilities, propane, that require setbacks to property lines. In this case, we're making everything, you know, that those parcels are getting larger, and so we wouldn't be making those setbacks any worse. So we're requesting a waiver from that requirement, in that it would again require some additional survey work, and feel like it's not necessary in this particular case. So I think that's the overview, and I'd be happy to take questions and go from there.
I have a question that might not be about the acceptance, more the approval, but so just to clarify though, the Hutchins Road right of way, would we be removing the entire right of way, or, I mean, I think I read somewhere it would just go to, I mean, in other words, would it go to here, or the entire right of way?
I think that's a piece of property that's owned.
We were-
Parcel, right?
Well, it would become a part. This part would become a part of the overall parcel.
Okay.
Essentially, correct. But it was pointed out that the 2 abutting properties do have access onto that driveway currently. So I think that the conveyance would need to require an easement to allow access for those existing parcels.
Okay, and that would be,
That
okay.
could certainly be a condition, and we would need to address that.
Okay.
I believe your plan does show kind of the aprons from Hutchins Road onto those parcels. Are those the shared aspect that you're referring to?
Correct.
Yeah. But, and the removal of the right-of-way for Hutchins Road would primarily just be the interior dotted line where it looks like there was a cul-de-sac proposed? That's what's going to be abandoned?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And do we, so I mean, so we're doing a boundary line adjustment, so there are 1, 2, 3, I guess 3 other parties?
Correct.
And are they all on board and signed on and?
Joseph, I believe you can confirm we've received signatures from all 3 of the other applicants as well, yeah.
That's correct, and it should be in the packet with a blue sticky, but it,
Okay, so over this one.
so we would need, it's,
Oh, yeah, okay.
Slater, Tillotson, Pendley, and Pine Gate are
Got it.
the four parties to the adjustment.
And the property to the north is a manufactured home cooperative, right? So there's one owner that represents all the people that live there.
Okay, yeah, I see that here. All right, good.
Is- Pendley. Sorry, who signed on behalf of Pine Gate? Is that? You?
Steve, the president.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's hard for me to see what signatures we have and then
Right,
copies that I have,
Stevie's.
so I-
Copies are a little.
Yeah, as long, Joseph, as long as you can
Stevie's.
confirm that we've received all the signatures.
I have, yes, I have
Okay,
seen that, and I'll
great.
try to
Thank you.
pull them up here too.
So, how do we feel about the waivers?
Is that what you're taking? Get rid of this? They're getting rid of this, is that?
I'm willing to move the application as complete. How about that?
Is that a motion?
It is.
Okay.
What was it?
I'll move that we accept the application as complete, which would indicate acceptance of the waivers.
Second?
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to accept as complete. Is there any further discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, the application is accepted as complete. Okay, so we'll move on to discussion of approval and eventually, of course, findings of fact and, yeah. So do we have any further questions at this point? And before we get to approval, which we're not there yet anyway, of course, it sounds like we are going to have some conditions based upon potentially easements and the piece of land in the northeast corner and so forth. Let me just look at this. Okay.
In your research, was Fairgrounds Road ever limited access?
I don't know that we came across
That
that.
wasn't historically Route 25, was it?
Fairgrounds is an unnumbered state highway.
25 is,
I don't believe
It's
it
not
has
Hubbardston
any.
State Highway.
I think Highland was on 25.
Right, okay. I was just thinking that those two parcels probably could have access on Fairgrounds Road if they chose to, but if the property owner is willing to allow them to access via Hutchins Road, that's probably a better solution for all parties.
Do we have any questions prior to a public hearing? No? All right, it is 7:02, and I will open the public hearing. Would anyone like to speak to this application? If so, please come up and to the podium.
Maybe remind folks that it's just the boundary line adjustment.
Yes, and we are just talking about the boundary line adjustment at this point and not the site plan review.
Understood. Chris Woods, 157 Fairgrounds. I am also the owner of 162 Fairgrounds, the middle lot along the southern border of the property in question. So my question is a simple one, and that is just whether the applicant has confirmed the location of all of the boundary pins with relation to the original subdivision that was done by Kevin French, I think. So I guess, and let me tell you why I'm asking that. It's just, I mean, it's by hearsay from several people. Admittedly, it's hearsay. There's some question as to the correct location of some of those pins. And since I look ahead and probably will put a fence up at the rear of my property, I'm concerned of whether the rear pins are, to the best we know, in the correct location. So that, I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
The applicant like to address that? Yeah.
As part of the survey, we did locate all of the pins. They do show up on the plan, and then they basically create a retracement of the original survey and close it essentially. So they make sure that everything, all the plan math works. So you will see on our plan, we do show the 2 rebars on the back 2 corners of the property you're referring to, and they basically say they have Kevin's LS number on it, and it looks like they're right where they're supposed to be, essentially. So
So looks like means, to the best of your knowledge, they're where they should be.
correct.
Somebody verified
Yes, it was all these were all surveyed as part of the survey. Yeah, so they should be good.
that. Thank you.
Can I just ask a question? Only because I'm unfamiliar with surveying standards. If you found a marker that wasn't, if it was outside of a certain range of where you anticipated it, would that be noted on the plan? I'm not sure what surveying standards are. Like,
Yep.
if you were to find a discrepancy in the field from what you found,
I realize
How-
that
how
you're
would
not
you-
a surveyor.
Yep, that's what I was going to say. So
Okay.
I am not a licensed land
So you're an
surveyor. I will
engineer,
just say
right?
that I'm an engineer, and I
Okay.
work with a lot of surveyors, and they're in my company and
all
everything.
right, well, thank you for the clarification.
But I think that what happens is there is typically some deviation. There's tolerances, right? So there are tolerances where we will essentially we shoot it where we find it. Sometimes they bend to the side or whatnot, but essentially, if I don't think that they note it, I don't think that they say it was off by 0.2 feet, right? But if there's a significant, if it's in a really wrong spot, we have to set a new pin, right? So we set a new
That's
monument.
fine. That was what the question I was
Yeah,
getting at more
yeah.
than anything, is if there's a significant discrepancy, you would set a new one where the existing one's supposed to be.
Correct. Yep.
Thank you. This was really
Or
more,
if it's missing.
this was really more about the abutters question, and like, it's close enough that you didn't note anything out of the ordinary. Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments? Okay. Leave this open for a moment.
Anybody online?
Anyone online with members of the public that are not part of our teams? Joseph? No?
No, just the property owner online.
Okay. All right. Do we have any further questions on the board side? Yes, Mike?
Was there any reliance on this trail that comes out at Pine Gate for their approval?
Their approval of the trail?
When Pine Gate got their approvals for their development, was there any reliance that this trail was an emergency exit or anything like that?
That's a good question.
Not that I'm aware of. Like a secondary means of access, you mean? It's
Yeah.
pretty close to the primary access, right?
Right, it is.
I wouldn't think that would be the case just because of its proximity to the primary access, but I'm not aware of that.
Yeah, it'd probably be very hard to find.
I believe that I was told at one point that when the piece of property that is currently looking for the adjustments was going to be another trailer park.
Oh, okay.
It was going to be their secondary
That makes
entrance
sense.
for fire,
Okay.
and that was where it was gonna come out. So it's probably not necessary at this point anymore, but I don't think we have anything in our plan for that. It was just that was put in for secondary entry for fire.
If it
rescue.
developed. If it developed.
And in the future, please, come up to the podium.
All I was gonna
Okay.
say is,
Yeah.
looking at the existing roads through Pine Gate, it looks like they could exit to an abutting property to the north if there were an emergency, but that's just an assumption on my part.
All right.
And I didn't know our dump road was called Incinerator Road.
I didn't know that either.
Really? That's what it shows on our tax map.
No idea, yeah.
What is the condition of Hutchins Road? Is it drivable now?
Just the entrance part that leads to the two driveways.
That's
This is-
it?
Well, you can drive in. I mean, the trail that you see, I think you could drive in there, right?
Could you go
with a
beyond the
pickup.
cul-de-sac, the turnaround, or no?
Yes.
Or is it pretty much end there?
Well, it's been logged in the past year, right?
been
I
lo-
drove in there a little over a year ago, and it was when I was showing it as a real estate agent. I drove into the circle and went down that trail a little ways and came back. It was flat and sand road, it was fine.
Yeah.
I don't have any other questions.
No, I'm going to say it is 7:09. I will close the public hearing. Should we start looking at findings of fact?
Mm-hmm.
We could always continue to discuss any other questions you might have along the way.
I think it would be appropriate.
I have probably one comment, John. as,
Mike?
From all the time and effort we've been putting on with the Housing Committee, it just seems like we've got town sewer, only town sewer, correct? Is there town water? There's both?
I think there is water out there.
So, the Housing Committee has been discussing the lack of acreage for housing and the need for housing. And as far as I know, storage units are kind of a nice little way to save the property, because it's not a huge impact of land, but there's few and far between water and sewer land in Plymouth. Take it however you want, you can do whatever you want with it, but that's just my observation.
And ultimately, it doesn't affect the decision we make, but
No.
yeah.
No,
And that's, it sounds like your concern is more about potential future use, but it does not affect the boundary line adjustment either
No.
way.
no, I'm just throwing it out there.
Okay. I had the same thought.
Yeah.
Do we have any
That's okay.
findings of fact? Or concerns?
The boundary line adjustment brings some encroachments into conformity.
Yep.
It appears that there are other encroachments to be addressed even after the boundary line adjustment, but those are noted as well. They seem to be temporary structures.
Fire, police, and building have no issues?
I just wanted to talk as to that other temporary structure.
Yeah.
It's just a small tent structure that we're just gonna help the owner move so that it's within.
I mean, the note indicated that. I wasn't worried about it, but I appreciate that. Thank you.
All dimensional requirements are met.
Yep.
All proposed changes to bounds are clearly met, even if the total entirety of the affected lots are not depicted.
There is a lot that would be left without frontage, although the applicant has agreed to put that as a condition of approval, I believe. Is that correct?
You're
The
referring to-
northeast corner?
We're gonna do a
Right,
voluntary.
we would want to do make a
Yeah.
condition that a voluntary merger is.
Yeah, yeah.
So voluntary merger will be a condition of approval if granted.
To make certain we don't have a lot without frontage.
Right,
Mhm.
yeah.
Lot 77 and lot 76 will be merged. As indicated by the note.
And distinct from the facts, but I should note that I did receive a call from one of the abutters who has one of the properties on Hutchins Road, and his concern, he expressed some concern about ensuring that he can continue to have access to the portion of Hutchins Road that he currently uses to access his house. He wasn't concerned about the property, or the part of the road beyond his driveway, but he did express, concern that he still be able to use Hutchins Road for access to his house.
And it seems the applicant is willing to provide an easement there for access. How do we feel?
I already made one motion tonight.
I think I've made one as well. I would make a motion that we approve this application with the following conditions. The applicant will do a how do you say that? A voluntary lot merger, as indicated on the plan. And the applicant will allow, or create an easement to allow for continued driveway access to the two properties that are adjacent to that remaining tail of Hutchins Road.
I'll second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second for conditional approval. Any further discussion?
Under the departmental review for Plymouth Village Water and Sewer, what is it says we would ask the applicant to provide documentation regarding the easement. This easement, what is that in reference to, Joseph?
Yeah, there's a easement shown along the western property edge, 20-foot water and sewer easement. And Plymouth Village Water and Sewer indicated in their review that they did not have documentation on their end of this sewer easement, and asked if the applicant could basically explain its purpose and that it wouldn't be impacted by this adjustment, or whatever that intended purpose was wouldn't be negatively impacted by the adjustment.
Okay, so it says we would ask the applicant to provide documentation regarding this easement and provide clarification on its intent to serve abutting parcels.
Would you like to speak to that?
Speak to that? Yeah,
Yes.
sure. I forgot about that comment. So I did speak with Jason Randall at the district, and we looked into that easement a little further. It was shown on the previous plan, but it was never actually dedicated to anyone. It was never granted, so there's no easement. The easement doesn't benefit anyone. We don't know, but we think that it was probably reserved by the previous owner of Pine Gate because they own this property and potentially wanted to run sewer down that way. There's no sewer there. There's no intention for sewer there, and there's sewer on Beach Hill Road now. So in talking with Jason, I think I talked with our surveyor to see if we could just eliminate it, and apparently we can't. We just have to leave it on the plan and it carries forward, but it's not in anyone's deed, essentially. Does that make sense? So it's not granted to anyone.
It sounds like it may have been created before. There was sewer on Beach Hill Road as a potential.
That's what I think.
Potentially.
That's what we think happened, yeah. But it was never used.
Thank you. All right, any further discussion? Okay. All in favor of the motion to conditionally approve this boundary line adjustment?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? All right. The boundary line adjustment is approved. Thank you very much. And of
Do we
course,
have
you're not going to go very far.
Who was the second? Who seconded? Excellent.
I'm gonna shuffle some papers around here.
We're making good time, knock on wood.
No, don't say that.
Knock on wood. I did it.
Now we get to the site plan review.
It's not allowed. I forgot.
All right, next up, we have a site plan review, for this, same parcel. Slater Holdings and LLC self-storage, an LLC Slater Holdings LLC, self-storage facility, an application for site plan review from Horizons Engineering on behalf of property owner Slater Holdings LLC to develop a self-storage facility with an office and associated site improvements on parcel 208076, located on Hutchins Road, Fairgrounds Road. Would you like to speak to the site plan review?
Sure. Joseph, do you think we could bring up those plans again and I could just go over them here?
Be able to screen
Does that work? Okay, so maybe go to the, well, we can start with the one right before that, which is just the existing conditions. So this is just basically representing, you know, the parcel as it exists now that you've approved the boundary line adjustment. It notes the soils. The soils are Adams, very well-drained, sandy soils, so that's good. As we discussed before, access on Fairgrounds Road. There's also a secondary access onto Pine Gate Road. All right, so we can go to the next one now. So this is the layout plan, kind of without all the grading and notes, just a simplified version to show the layout. Essentially, the driveway would be extended up here, gravel driveway, to access the office building, which is shown right here, some associated parking for the facility, and then these light gray areas are asphalt pavement for self-storage buildings. This one is 40 feet wide, all of them are 180 feet long, and these are 30 feet wide. It's hard to see on this plan, but the entire facility does have a fence around it. There's a gate, a mechanized gate by the office building. And I'll just note now, one of the things that staff picked up on is that we proposed an 8-foot high gate, or 8-foot high fence. We're happy to have a condition to make that a 6-foot fence so that we don't have to deal with a zoning. I think it would be a special exception for that. So they're fine moving it down to a 6-foot fence. So essentially, you know, folks could access the self-storage facility with this driveway, parking over here. This area out here is a gravel surface that's proposed for boat and RV storage. I think that covers this sheet if you want to go on to the next one. So this sheet shows the grading, drainage, and utilities. So the site slopes from north to south, fairly gentle slope, really good soils out here. They've left a vegetative buffer around the entire perimeter of the property, 50 feet in most places, 100 at the north side. And so the grading, essentially the pad will be pretty much flat, and then we'll pitch it into a series of catch basins in between the buildings to collect all the runoff from the buildings and the paved areas. Those will be piped down to this forebay here. So this is a pre-treatment area where those pipes will all come into along forebay there for pre-treatment before it comes into the infiltration basin, which is the larger basin there. So because the soils are so good, we're able to actually infiltrate the entire 50-year storm event for the contributing area, which is great. So we're putting all the stormwater back in the ground. What else to show you on here? Water and sewer. So we've shown the office will be served by water and sewer. There'll be a new sewer manhole out here on Fairgrounds and comes up to another manhole right here. So that is proposed to be a main extension. So if there were to be other uses in the future, they could be served by that sewer. So that's an 8-inch sewer main, and then the service comes in here. This plan also shows a water main coming in, but after talking with Jason Randall, he doesn't like the idea of putting a main extension in if the uses are not yet determined, right? So there may be potential to further develop the property, but at this time there's no plans for that, and without a definitive plan, he wants to see basically a 1-inch service for the office building. So that's what we're gonna modify this to reflect that. There may be some discussions with the district about potentially putting in a main, but not actually accessing it until a later time. But we'll get approvals from the district on all the water and sewer components, obviously. Power comes in overhead to a point right here. The intent is to come underground from that pole to the building with power and communications. I think that kind of addresses this sheet for the most part. If you want to go to you can skip the details and go to the landscaping plan. There we go. Okay, so there we go. So this is the site lighting and landscaping plan. The site will have, there's 3 different types of lights we're proposing. There's some pole-mounted lighting. You'll see those labeled as A's along the access drive and the parking area. The buildings will have some building-mounted LED sconce lights to illuminate the drive areas, and then there is a sign proposed on the building which will have kind of a gooseneck fixture, as well as there's a sign at the road proposed as well, which will have that same gooseneck feature. Landscaping, we're obviously keeping the existing treed buffer, and then adding a lot of trees. I think they're a variety of maples, birch, oak, and some perennials and shrubs around the office building. I think that kind of covers the site plan. The project will require an alteration of terrain permit, as Joseph pointed out, and we've just submitted our a copy to you guys today, and that'll go into the state. We'll need Plymouth Village District as well for water and sewer. So happy to take any questions.
Is there a detail of proposed lighting fixtures?
Yeah, on the back.
There is,
Thank you.
right there.
Plantings. Plantings too. Awesome. All right, great. Full cutoff. And these are the gooseneck fixtures for the signs.
Right, so that's for the building mounted and post mounted sign.
We've not accepted this as complete, right?
There are also building elevations in your packet, as well as an exhibit of the proposed signs.
And let's see here. Were there any waivers for this application?
There were not.
Okay.
The only thing I didn't mention is they're not proposing to have a large-scale dumpster. They will have some rollaways that are behind the building. There's a note on one of the sheets right behind the office building. There's a little gravel pad just proposed for rollaway trash. Right here.
else has to start making motions.
How do we all feel about this application for completeness?
I'm feeling pretty good about its completeness.
I'll move that we accept the application as complete.
Second.
Any further discussion? Okay. All in favor of accepting this application as complete? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, so the application is accepted as complete. And you've already gave us a pretty good introduction here, so we can
Have
any questions?
Yeah, elevations.
Yeah, I didn't see those either.
I mean, I saw them
Are they
in the
large
digital
format
version,
plan?
but I don't have the paper in front of me.
They should be in packet.
I have a small paper
Somewhere in the
version
packet.
myself, but there, well, that's, yeah, so that's,
Okay.
This is not our first storage unit rodeo. It is in the past couple months. So,
okay.
and so, some of these things that, we've gone through this, what was it, just like 2 months ago? With another store, and, yeah, not even our first on Fairgrounds Road. So, just curious, this came up in the last one, color of the units.
Colby, you want to take that one?
Yes, yeah, hello everyone, my name is Colby Coombs, I'm the owner of the property, and color of the buildings, we're trying to keep it as natural as almost tannish, to kind of keep and blend in. I know the sign is orange and blue. To be honest, guys, I want to get rid of the orange. I think the orange is too bright, in general. And the color of the buildings will be as neutral as possible. And I believe if you like the proposal of the colors, I do have a mock-up I could send over to you guys. It's to get one exactly what it looks like, but the color palette, I'm happy to share with you. At the first was looking at somewhat of a brownish or like a dark bluish roof and a tan building.
And what about the unit doors?
Oh, the unit doors will also be blue or tan, keeping that color scheme going.
Great. I think the challenge we have on Fairgrounds Road is it is very residential, but since it's in the agricultural zone, you can do all sorts of stuff there. And so it does change, it can change a neighborhood feel. So trying to keep the color palette as neutral as possible so we don't have, bright orange doors or, yeah.
I just, based on my recollection of the property, I don't think you're gonna see much, even from, I think the only perspective into the property is from Hutchins Road, and it's, you go by pretty quickly because it's still set back off the road quite a ways. I don't think you're gonna see these buildings from Fairgrounds at all.
I'm thinking more about the people who
Yeah,
live
butters.
there. Yeah.
Sure, yeah, that makes sense.
Which raises another question. I mean, it looks like you do have a pretty good buffer here, and so you have downcast lights, and they're not going to extend beyond the property, their illumination.
Correct.
Okay.
Well, I'd like to make a note too, the buffer we put in there was naturally, we try to make friends, and we met all of the neighbors, at least the butters off Hutchins Road, and Doreen and Rosie on the westward part of the property, and Steve and the co-op, trying to keep it as natural as possible because it was trees there beforehand. And obviously trying to keep the look of the town as much as we can to make it as natural and least invasive. I had a Cumberland Farms in the town I grew up in, and I hated the orange, so it kind of maintained in the back of my head. So again, really trying to keep natural as much as we can to not be invasive, making sure that the lights are not harming anything at all, to really try to be the best we can to our neighbors in the area.
I recall one of the other issues was the fence. What kind of a fence do you propose to put up?
Chain link. And we proposed 8 feet at the beginning, but once Will mentioned that within the special exemption for the 8 feet, we just said 6 feet is what's required. And to make it simple, we just want fence for security and to, as much as we can there to give peace of mind for that property for security there. So 6 feet is why we went with that, just the maximum.
Thank you.
And since you're not going to have a dumpster, you're going to have roll-away trash, and how often will that be emptied or?
To be transparent, I did not have that answer. I have worked with other friends on saying the responsibility is taking the trash with you in and out, management for your storage there. For the dumpster traveling, I don't have an answer for you, sir. I apologize for the frequency of having it come and go.
And I normally wouldn't ask, but since you're not going to have a kind of screened dumpster, and you're going to have something different than we normally would see, that's the only reason I'm really kind of curious.
To clarify, Colby, I think what you're not intending to have the users of the storage facility be able to dump trash, correct? It's just for the office.
Correct. Correct.
Yeah. So I would think this would be on like a 2-week frequency, kind of like a house sort of situation.
I think one of the other concerns too is traffic coming and going all night long, or during, are you gonna have specific hours?
We plan to maintain it, access, actually going in and out 24/7 with security.
So tenants will have customers will have a key code or something like that to get themselves in? Or is it just gonna?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
It will be a secured gate that will give access to the town and fire department for a special coded access as well.
Do you have any further questions before a public hearing?
I think traffic, my question, traffic volume, I guess is, I know the last one we said wasn't expected to see that much of an increase in traffic, but I'm just curious as, what the anticipated traffic load would be from.
Yeah, I didn't really look at that. I don't think this is a really significant traffic generator. I mean, generally people aren't coming on a daily basis to access, but I mean, we can try to get an answer for you. I don't actually know. I can't really say, but I don't think it shouldn't be a heavy generator.
I think the discussion we had on the last one was that if you look at a build-out analysis of how many homes could be put on that lot under current zoning and the number of trips that you typically see per home, that storage units are generally a lower impact travel scenario than residential use.
Certainly. I mean, I would think that it would be one of the lower traffic generators of the options here, honestly.
I want to make sure we're covering the questions that
Yeah.
other folks might hear.
Sure.
Or might have, so.
In the office, will that be used just for the storage units, or will there be other uses for it?
The office is the only goal of maintaining the facility operations for that self-storage. No other businesses will be ran out of there.
And
One other note, Miss, I apologize to answer this. We are looking, in all the plans, it shows a conference room for the contractor bays that are proposed on the 40 feet wide building to allow renters to have a conference room in case they would like to take a meeting in there.
Interesting.
Not a bad idea.
I'm just kind of curious, so the boats and RVs, is that going to be self-storage, or what's the plan for keeping order in like boat trailers and all of that?
Yes, so with that is actually proposing lines where they can park on that side there. That is not a priority for us immediately. The immediate is a development with the gravel, but self-directed, no, that will not have access for everyone to drive in and out on there, mostly for the worry of damaging other property, when you're driving a big RV back and forth. It will not be covered. We would entertain a possible covered storage in the future, but at this current time, a gravel lot to be used for boat and RV storage, depending on what the market needs at that point.
So,
Will you have utilities out there in that area for the RVs to plug in and stuff? Will there be plug-in areas for them while they're storing them?
At this current, Will, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe no.
No, we're not that's not the intent. No.
The intent is not that people stay there and utilize it, it's for, the just park there and go. There's gonna be no living on that parking lot.
Well, just some of the big RVs need to be plugged in all the time. That's the only reason I was, yeah.
Take the battery home with you.
Do we feel we need an engineer review on drainage or anything?
It is a recommendation of the staff, that we request an escrow.
We did with the previous application.
We did.
I mean, it seems like any engineering review would be minimal, but I think it would be consistent with decisions we've made in the past to
I agree.
to ask that the applicant provide an escrow for engineering review.
Yeah, I think this site is quite different than, well, somewhat different than the last one as well, with, you know, different water issues, et cetera. But I do think, for consistency's sake, I think it does make sense to do an engineer review.
Should I just point out, I don't know what the other one was, but this one is going to have an alteration of terrain, so DES is going to review the drainage in great detail. But just point that out.
That should make the engineering review a lot easier, honestly.
It should be great.
And
It's just time consuming and it costs a little bit of money. That's all.
When we ask for an escrow money, it's kind of up to the consultant engineer to kind of review the scope, and when he sees, you know, an AOT plan from DES that's been approved, it's likely he won't spend much time on it.
Are we ready for public hearing?
I think so.
It is currently 7:40, and I will open the public hearing. If you'd like to speak, please come up to the podium. And please identify yourself for everyone in the room.
Once again, Chris Woods, 157 Fairgrounds, and I own the property across the way at 162. So we've heard that the property drains to the south, and big concern of mine in that we've got we're generating a fair amount of impervious surface here. It appears from the drawings, I'm not an engineer, but it seems like we're designing for a 50-year storm event. I realize that may be what's legally required, but I ask the board to consider that given some of the storms we've seen here in New England in recent years, we're seeing more than a 50 or 100-year storm event. So that a 50-year storm event for this area comes out at about just under 6 inches of rain in 24 hours. 100-year goes up a bit more than that, et cetera, et cetera. So we're potentially really impacted by any water that runs off of this property. It comes down through a swale directly across the street from us, under Fairgrounds Road, right onto our property. And so in the situation where the ground is frozen, that, you know, and we got 100% runoff there. Also, it is my impression that this facility in general is pretty heavily lit compared to most self-storage facilities. There are a lot of lights on these buildings, multiple kinds of lights. This is on all boundaries a residential neighborhood, all of them. And that's not going to change anytime soon. And I understand there's, you know, we've heard that there's going to be 24-hour access, so that potentially means we're looking at lights that are on all night long. So I'd encourage motion detector lights. I understand it has to be lit when people are there, but to have this place lit up all night long, affecting all of us in the perimeter, is not, you know, I realize it's the anything goes zone, but as far as the current use of the region, it is residential. So I ask you to consider those two issues, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments?
Good evening. Claire Eckert, 157 Fairgrounds Road. And I'm thinking about the fence. I know that you say you won't see this much, but when all the trees went away, we can now see through that band of trees that's left, and we can see back in there. And I would love to have an 8-foot fence, because then I won't see as much of it. I realize that that may not be required, but I think it would also help with any lighting impacts and things like that. If the fence were required to be a little bit higher, I think that would make the neighborhood a little more neighborly. So.
Would you prefer to see a fence then? I think the applicant mentioned chain link.
Chain link, so it's.
Is it chain link with
Privacy.
privacy slats? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. That would be nice. And I realize it's not required, but again, it's something that could be considered, and it might be an improvement for those of us that live right around this thing, so.
It would require the applicant to go to the zoning board for a special exception. So it's an additional step for them because they can do 6 feet. Requires a special exception.
Right.
And the type of fencing, I forget, do we specify character of fencing?
The zoning board on the last application did specify that we should decide the type of fencing.
Because it needs to be consistent with the character of the neighborhood.
Yeah.
I do think there are significant questions, when, obviously the owner has an interest in maintaining a secure facility. Sometimes privacy fence offers too much privacy for clandestine activity. So sometimes it's better for security to have it be open. That way anybody passing by can see any. So, I think security can work both ways.
I have a hard time with that because that's almost relying on the abutters to then be policing the property in their backyard.
True,
by
but
being able to see through the fence.
Right.
So, I understand that from the applicant's point of view, but I feel like that puts an additional, not just a visual burden, but also a
Responsibility
an
burden.
enforcement burden.
True.
Or neighborhood watch burden on the abutters.
We don't have anything that requires that type of fencing, and I think it comes down to the applicant's willingness or preference.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, thank you.
Does the applicant have anything to, any response in regard to, for example, lighting issues and lighting at night and those sorts of questions?
I believe we have an illumination study. I'm not sure if that was shown there. And the
revised
Well,
photometrics, the revised photometrics weren't in the application yet. So no.
You wouldn't happen to have them, with you, would you?
The vendor wasn't able to get us the revised version yet, so certainly the intent of this design is to have it all be down, and basically it's not going to illuminate anything except the pavement that's there.
Yeah.
The question of the number of lights though, and how much general ambient light that's gonna create, it's all downcast, but, is this gonna be this glow in a bunch of people's backyards? It's hard for me, I can't really visualize scale, but I do see.
They're 25 feet apart. They're pretty far apart.
Is that far?
Yeah. They're only they're only 10 or
These are
they
long
vary
buildings.
from I think 8 to 12 feet high, so they're downcast, so they don't really have a large spray,
It's
basically.
not gonna be like the football fields at night.
Well, no, of course not.
I would also like to note the coloring of the light, the strength of the light is not trying to have an LED giant ballpark, lit up. It's more of light for security, more net light. I don't know illumination terms, but I guess softer lighting, I guess you can try to coin it there, to provide lighting for the pavement on the entry and to provide security. But I would really not like to add a ballpark LED giant blasted lights in there to be encroaching too much. But I believe I would definitely like to get the illumination study for the board here.
And would the lights be on 24 hours a day, or at least at night? Or would they be? Yeah.
I will have to confirm with Tom if we plan for the motion or, at all times, or a switch. I do not have that answer currently.
I'd be curious to know, I mean, it would seem, I don't think you'd want to have individual motion sensors on fixtures just because like the cost of maintaining photo sensors on each fixture would be substantial, but I'm wondering if you can put a single motion sensor like at the entrance, so when somebody comes in, you'd have like a, 1 hour delay or something like that where, just have a sign up that says, if you're here for longer than an hour, the lights are going to turn off, come walk through the entrance again or something like that. But I mean, it would seem that I doubt you're going to get people throughout the night, and for the convenience of the abutters who enjoy dark skies, it might be a benefit.
The previous storage unit that we approved, their hours they were closed.
Got the exact
I
hours.
don't
They were
remember the
closed
hours,
at
but they
night.
were closed, I think it was maybe like a 10 PM or 11 PM closure overnight.
But I thought they were going to leave the lights on for security.
They were gonna leave the lights on,
Right.
but there were,
Because-
some of the lights,
But the fencing was privacy fencing.
right.
And given the proximity to residential development, besides the light, there's also the noise issue about trucks coming in and out, people unpacking things in the middle of the night,
Getting in arguments.
getting in arguments.
That could happen anywhere.
So I mean, I think it's more than light, it's also sound in a residential neighborhood, which could be an issue at night.
And, or if this is contractor storage, it could be early in the morning too. It could be, contractors going in at 5:30 to
Yeah.
get set up for the day.
So I don't think we can require the applicant to close at night, but I'm just wondering if that's something that might be under consideration.
Definitely within consideration, if you'd allow me to go back to the drawing board to truly understand and make sure. I hear all of the concerns 100%, and I appreciate you guys bringing it to my attention. Often on these times, might overlook some things, but you are correct about the lights, and you are correct about the sounds that you mentioned. These are very good points. If you'd allow me to revisit there, to just reconsider, I'd appreciate it. I also would like to make a comment on the fences, on the privacy slits, just to provide that. I would also like to re-entertain that as well. I know I believe Ms. Claire mentioned it about the opportunity. I think that is something we could also revisit and look at too, if that would be more beneficial. Privacy slats, I forget the actual terminology, I apologize.
I think that's, yeah. Yeah.
We got you.
Just slides between they go in diagonally along the chain link.
Yeah. Orange and white stripes? No, I'm just
Orange,
kidding.
all bright orange, right? He was saying he didn't like orange earlier. I was just, sorry.
So John, I have a question.
Yes, Mike?
Question for the applicant. Are these buildings, each building is for one tenant, one renter? Are they having access to both sides, or is there one side in general, or are these like split up into many different units, each building?
These units are split up into different configurations based on size, and
Can you put up the elevation again? Sorry, we're gonna lose your image here for a second.
Colby, there are doors on
Okay.
both sides, right?
yes, correct, there's doors on both sides.
So there's like garage doors.
So on the ends, are there still doors on the ends as well?
Yes. The doors on the ends would not be entering the ones on the side, though. The end units are just 5 by 5 foot, is the proposal.
And you don't envision any of the tenants or the renters working there during the day? Doing construction, fabrication, anything like that? Or because if they've got an office on a potential meeting room for clients, they may be there working during the day?
Yes, sir. So the contractor-based storage is for storage only, not to be operating business in any ways. And we also want to maintain, we're going to have a list of non-permitted materials to be stored in there in order to really preserve it. I have gone through a headache on another property having some environmental issues, and we are attempting to stop that at the very beginning with, you know, storage of it. So operating within those contractor bays is not something we're looking to permit.
Because if you don't have electricity,
That was my question.
they're gonna have generators running, and that can get loud for the neighbors.
There will be, Will, did we confirm on that, the electricity, the lighting, was it the outlets? I'm drawing a blank here, I apologize.
In the buildings, you mean?
Yes, in the contractor specific.
I don't know if you were intending to have, I don't think you were intending to have power there, but
Yeah, I was not intending to have power to be able to plug in a saw or, you know, something else in there to be able to operate within those bays.
right.
Are you proposing any of these units to be heated?
Not on this, none of these will be heated, sir.
Okay.
And as far as people potentially working there, I know you have an office, so is that office going to have someone in it? I mean, in terms of if you do have contractor bays, to actually have enforcement of people not working, or is it just an honor code, or?
That's cold.
Yes, sir. So the office that will be attended by an operator from the company within that office to take clients and to be overseen.
Okay.
So it sounds like you had a couple issues you wanted to look into. Would you like to request
Continuation?
a continuation to our next meeting? To follow up on privacy screening, motion sensors, fencing details, I
Hours.
guess? What's that?
Hours.
Hours, yeah. There were a couple items that you said you would be willing to look into, but
Well, I think also hearing the, some of butter concerns, I think, to me, that kind of solidifies the need for engineer review.
Which would put us off till next meeting anyway for an approval, if we do that.
That would give the applicant some time to think through some of the stuff that we've talked about.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was going to say. It sounded like you were headed towards a peer review, so we're going to be continued a month, so we can come back with all these answers as well, hopefully a little bit ahead of the meeting. Yep.
the other site we reviewed recently was a little bit more complicated, and we did a site walk. I don't necessarily feel the need to do that here, but is anybody sufficiently concerned about aesthetics that they'd want to do a site walk here?
I think I agree with the other site was more complex in its neighborhood interaction because of the access road and because of some of the drainage issues and the wetland in a berm.
Mm-hmm.
This one seems a little less complex to me, so I don't feel a need to do a site walk. Plus, it's going to be dark at like 4:30 in mid-November.
Can I ask a question about the portion of the parcel that's not going to be developed? Are you planning to post that, or will that be open to the public? Or so in New Hampshire, you can actually put any undeveloped land. Well, yeah, if you have 10 acres, you can put it into current use. There are also, recreation adjustments if you allow public access. I just wasn't sure if you had a plan for that.
Interesting question.
I think possibly adding that to the list. I have a plan for future use. Not really what to discuss, and that's really about the developmental side. In regards to use of the public access, at this current time, I don't really have a direct answer because it is a self-storage, but also it is a nice flat piece of land for walking. And I think entertaining both sides, I'd be happy to really look at that with my father and Will as well. But really it's based on the security and really trying to provide a good, safe environment for people to place their stuff. But again, open to other things as well. And I think a comment I'd like to make to the board here is the water line on the main. For future development we're spoken about, Joseph. I know the housing need in the area, And ultimately, this phase one is expensive and looking to put something up there. But as the market demands, this is a great piece of property, and it's very flat and it is very easily developable. And I think having the opportunity, it is very flexible for what we could be looking at, whether either continuing with more storage if the market demands it, looking at industrial buildings with possibly manufacturing, which is our background is in manufacturing, specifically in medical and defense. And then on the last note is really looking at the housing or data storage to help provide for different things. It is a nice piece of land, and if allowing people to walk through while we're really finding out, it will be secure all around, regardless. But I would like the town to know that we are entertaining many different areas. I do know the housing challenge. I know it 100% throughout the country, and I would like to. We are keeping all possibilities open, depending on the highest and best use of what the town and community can need in the future.
I know it's a little bit outside of this site plan, obviously. If you did do housing, for example, would that be removing the storage units or right next to the storage units?
It would not be removing the storage units, sir. It would be next to or another portion.
And I know it's kind of immaterial to this particular site plan anyway, but I'm just kind of curious. Chris, did you have comment?
I think my question's been answered.
Okay, Mike?
I would just kind of piggyback what John just said, and I'm sure you've probably been keeping up with our housing committee meetings on Tuesday mornings.
No, not on that. I've read some about it, though. Joseph shared the links and the studies.
Good pitch.
And there is talk about, through our public meetings, about if property had water and sewer, rather than only reducing the lot size in that zone, there's talk about reducing it to a 10,000 square foot lot, which financially changes the whole equation from 43,000 square feet, or if you've got at least one public utility, it would switch it down to half an acre. We're talking about putting something in front of the town that would say 10,000 square feet, roughly.
Also, would we entertain the 50-year storm to 100-year storm? Would that,
I think we require 25.
okay.
And that's in statute too. I mean, even though I'm very aware of the likelihood of our storm frequency not being in alignment with historical records, but I think that's one of those cases where if we're going to change that, it needs to be changed in the standard for everybody. I don't
Yeah,
think
I
we can
just
do it
wanted
on
to bring it
a
up 'cause it was
per case
brought up.
basis. Yeah.
So it sounds like we're moving towards a continuation of this hearing, and I want to make sure we have all of our requests to the applicant and expectations in line before we do that. Is there anything else we
So
wanna add?
escrow and engineer review.
Mm-hmm.
I think lighting plan is the thing I heard us wanted.
It sounds like we already have in process anyway.
Yeah.
Fence. I think, wasn't that one of them?
Yeah, I think there's some things for the
He was gonna
applicant to
go over,
consider. I
yeah.
think there's sort of more good faith efforts on behalf of the neighborhood than anything we can actually require. So I think, around lighting and fencing, operating hours, I think were the things that we were thinking about.
That was the list I had, I think. So in terms of what the board is requiring of us is a photometrics plan, correct? And then we will obviously consider the other things as well. That were the operational hours, the fence type. And then we will coordinate with Joseph on the peer review.
Okay.
So then I guess we can check with, is it Mike Vignali still? I mean, hopefully we can get it done before the next hearing.
Mhm.
Is that, okay.
Does the board still want to look at whether there'd be restrictions on building and fabricating on site? Do we want to see a rental agreement or anything proposed, or restrictions?
I'm not certain to what extent we can put those restrictions on. I mean, like as Rebecca was saying, it's a good faith effort to be a good neighbor. I mean, my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong.
I believe you're right.
Yeah.
The only thing I'd like to say is it looks like a good plan from my perspective, and, I think once we answer these questions, barring any unforeseen other developments, I don't see a problem in this moving forward. That's just my individual perspective. And I wanted to offer that to the applicant only because he's made a good faith effort to address some of the applicant, or the abutters' concerns.
One other question, Alaskan slabs, how thick?
I don't know if we've got into that. He's just wondering what the slabs are going to be, or if they're Alaskan slabs or frost walls. Is that what you're getting at? I don't know if you guys figured. I don't know if we've gotten that far. Have you, Colby?
Wait,
You can't tell that I'm looking at him.
Sorry. Yeah, judging by my lack of knowledge on the Alaskan slabs, I would say that we don't have that answer yet on.
We haven't gotten that far.
The actual development on the permitting side.
Sounds like some kind of salmon dish.
It's not dinner.
You wouldn't want to eat one, I don't think.
Didn't.
All right, do we have a,
I'd like to make a motion to continue this hearing to November 16th.
Second.
any further discussion?
Third.
Thank you, Phil. Further discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, so we are continued to our next business meeting. Which was the 16th, you said?
I did say the 16th.
Which I hope it's the
I did
16th.
just check, it's the 16th.
Okay.
The next public meeting, not the planning
Right.
I would like to thank Will for enduring my poor humor tonight, too.
Thank you. I enjoyed it.
Thank you.
It's always a pleasure.
Thank you very much. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
See you next month.
All right.
All right. So,
Can someone tell me what an Alaskan slab is?
Oh, it's kind of like, it bows, it's deeper in the middle.
Okay.
It doesn't require, and it kind of floats versus putting in footings
Okay.
that are more evasive, and Sue can probably explain it a lot more than I can.
Well, that's exactly.
But it's a lot more
I didn't realize they were
impact to the
picking them up.
ground with footings, which would
Okay.
require, an Alaskan slab, you can just take a dozer and it's gone in a matter of minutes.
Okay.
And then you could put housing there.
and it tastes delicious.
Yeah.
The detriment
that.
is, the downside is if you have the ground freezing, it can heave and thaw, but like, it's a really well-drained soil, like, it's unlikely that there's gonna be a lot of
And it's a lot cheaper to put in a Alaskan slab than it is
frost
footings.
walls. I don't think
Neck
I've
of the
ever
woods.
seen a storage unit go in with frost walls.
Yeah,
They're almost always on a slab.
Not to interrupt this conversation.
Construction details.
Right. Are there informational or pre-application reviews? I'm looking around and we have someone on Zoom. No?
No, nobody's approached
Okay.
me about coming before the board for this, so I don't believe there's anybody left on Zoom except for the owner, property
Okay.
owner still.
Doesn't have anything else for us. Other business from members of the board and planning staff. We have a couple of things on here. I also want to say before I forget, and we have a flyer here. We have a community meeting next Wednesday at 6:30, and we all agreed upon this, I believe, at our last meeting. And so that's, next Wednesday at 6:30 at the Bobcat Cafe at the high school. And so it's a community meeting, and we're going to be leading, it's going to be kind of similar in format to our first community meeting, where there's going, except with more comfortable seats, because we're in the Bobcat Cafe, where there'll be an introduction and some information being put out there for the community, and then we're kind of breaking out into smaller groups for further discussion of more specific issues that can hopefully kind of guide us through these last parts of our way through the zoning amendment process, and then we'll kind of reconvene for a larger discussion um, after those smaller meetings are over. So anyways, that's next Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. If you can be there a few minutes early. When do we have access to the room?
There's no event before us anymore,
Okay.
so anytime basically after 3:30. They just don't, as long as we don't
Please be there at
interrupt.
3:30?
the-
How about 6?
As long as we don't interrupt the flow of children going to the building. So really, for the, if board members wanted to show up a bit early,
Greet the public.
there's no issue. But yeah, public, for the public, 6:30 is the official start
I'm going to
time.
apologize that I will be out of town for
Okay.
business travel.
So other business, there's the Lakes Region Planning Commission discussion. You might remember from last time, the LRPC asked us, the commissioners, to consider adopting the housing assessment for the Lakes Region without the fair share tables from the it's been so long. What's the word I'm even looking for? Workforce housing fair share numbers. What's that?
They have fair share numbers in there?
So, if you weren't here,
That's the
a
problem.
little bit of background information. I'll try to make it quick since we went through this last time. So there's a housing assessment.
Yep.
So there's this housing assessment, and we want to adopt it.
Yep.
And there's been some pushback. We're not quite certain even from whom, because it wasn't really at the meeting, about including the fair share analysis. I think I gave you the right table anyway. Let me know if it's not. And so there's been some pushback, and because it might put theoretically communities on the hook for not meeting their fair share of workforce housing. And so what we talked about at our last meeting was at the last commissioner meeting, the director urged us to adopt the housing assessment without a fair share analysis, and it seems that the executive board, right? Is their name?
Talking
Yeah.
about the county commissioners?
No, of the Lakes Region Planning
Lakes
Commission,
Region Planning Commission.
has endorsed that plan, and honestly, I listened to the argument. I'd prefer to keep it in there, and I'd personally be willing to, endorse it either way or adopt it either way. What bothered me a little bit, and again, I went into this last time, but I know a few of you weren't here last time. Some of the arguments that were made against adopting it seemed disingenuous and misleading. And so I was personally more troubled by the discussion that was actually had, which it seemed like a really misleading discussion. Especially being on the housing committee and talking about these issues every week and learning what all this stuff means. It didn't really seem like a fair discussion. And in addition to that, there's the more basic issue of the draft's been out there for a year at this point, which includes these numbers. Everybody has these numbers. Anybody who wants them has them. And I think the argument that was made, well, if we adopt them, then we're saying we endorse these numbers. And if we don't adopt them, we don't endorse the numbers, but they're still there. And frankly, to me, it seems like we have something to hide if we take it out.
Is there any means of enforcement to this agreement, or
not-
are these merely aspirational?
It's not really more or less enforceable than it is otherwise if we endorse them or not.
These are data
Um,
and projections,
yes. And
and not something we're agreeing to, right?
Yeah, we have no
so
authority to
in
require
the
that
letter,
50% of
in
the
this
housing
letter
be-
written by the commissioner, they were described as a quota. They are not a quota by
Right.
state law.
Right.
And basically, if you don't meet your fair share, and you have, this is my understanding of the law, if you don't meet your fair share, and a developer wants to develop, they should have a reasonable opportunity to do so.
That makes sense.
And if your zoning is restrictive, they can sue you if you don't meet your fair share. And
So,
They don't deem themselves as having a reasonable opportunity.
so this gets back to workforce housing, because in the RSA, it's defined that there should be any community that doesn't have a fair share of workforce housing must accept applications proposing to build workforce housing.
At least have
Or
a zoning
allow- or they
ordinance
can
that makes
allow,
it feasible
yeah.
and that's not overly
That
restrictive.
makes sense.
But,
That makes sense.
but that law.
Now I understand the
That is
context of this.
required whether this table is in the report
So
or
this,
not.
this
Yeah.
is just a standard.
And this has
that-
already been
This is just a-
published as part of a draft anyway, it's out there.
So a developer could come to us, even if we don't adopt that, a developer could come to this and say, this draft was authored by Central Region Planning, and we want to refer to this in saying that, we feel like Plymouth does not have
Yeah.
enough affordable housing, and we're proposing to build this, so we are therefore asking for
And-
these density.
And your zoning doesn't
increase
look like it
requirements.
allows it, and therefore we're gonna sue you. And lawsuits are really the enforcement mechanism.
So, yeah, the RSA is out there regardless of whether we have this table or not. Like, somebody could do the math
Yeah.
and say, we think you don't have
They can pull
an
up the
affordable
draft.
housing.
They can just pull up the draft as well.
Yep.
So, I mean, to me, it looks like we have something to hide at this point, since it's been out there for a year.
This RSA's been out there for 10 years, too.
And the RSA's been out there a whole lot longer, yeah. This is the first time we've considered including it in the housing assessment.
Okay.
And I'd just like to comment, as a developer,
Yeah.
a former developer, that information's important when we go out for grants,
Right.
right? Because it's a point system, and there has to be some legal way that we could show that the town has a need, or has numbers,
Yeah.
because the town's involved, right? When we go out for these grants, especially for a workforce housing grant,
Yeah.
it's not just the developer directly back to the state or the feds, it goes back to the state, and then comes back to the town,
Right.
and those numbers have to be somewhere. That's my 2 cents.
I was gonna say, even if they're draft, I think they'll have as much value as if they're accepted or not.
And I was just looking at some of the arguments that were made that night and then reiterated in this letter. It's like, that these percentages were come upon by, just distributing the raw numbers on the basis of regional population, which is actually not true. They actually used, labor market areas and other data as well in determining the numbers.
So what, I mean, it seems like we're all in agreement that we're fine with the tables being in the report. What's the question for the board?
So the question for the board is, the LRPC asked the commissioners to go back to their towns and ask their towns if, the same question, if they wanted us to adopt with or without, just to inform our discussion as commissioners when it might come up to a vote this coming Monday.
Keep the table.
Okay? Anybody else have an opinion?
I mean, I think we should adopt the report one way or another, but I think there's no reason to not have full transparency here.
I agree. I don't see it as this basically just saves a developer from doing a whole bunch of work that would allow them to propose a workforce housing development in a community.
And I will say, based
And
on
I think there's a shortage of that as we are.
based on our last discussion, last month, it's almost 99% sure it probably is going to pass without the table. Just a heads up. I don't necessarily agree with that, but you say adopt it either way, but preferably with the table.
Or perfect.
Yeah.
I don't know enough about it.
Okay.
I've probably seen the paper, but I haven't studied it. And there's going to be many more years to adopt that, and we seem like we've gotten by already the way we have, and I don't see a need for it.
I've often wondered if there was some data like that out there, because when I read the RSA on workforce housing, it specifically talks about, towns having their fair share. And I'm pretty sure that when I moved to Plymouth 9 years ago, Plymouth would have, the existing housing market had enough housing that I think met the definition of affordable, that we would not have been required to accept, a workforce housing application if someone brought one to us. But that being said, I think it behooves us to do it anyway, even if I think we're in a different place now, and I think that, but either way, I think we're okay.
And I look at it, I've brought this up before, what population are they using for Plymouth for that table?
It's-
3,000 or 6,000?
I believe it's our,
Population of 7.
Census, it's 2020
yeah,
census.
it has to be not, it has to include everyone. That's our population.
The college too.
Yeah, yeah.
So when you do that, when you think about all the dorms and the average income of a freshman through senior living in those dorms, every single one of those would be below the poverty line. Probably 90%, 80%, I'm not
A
sure.
lot of those are
Depending
gonna
on-
get counted as dependents.
Yeah, I
in
was gonna say,
their
depending on how
home.
they're counted for their income, they might be dependents.
But there's, a lot of them are saying that their residence is Plymouth. I'm not sure if you can be
You can still be a
dependent
dependent.
and be in another state.
There's a provision on this, I don't think we need to necessarily get into this, but there's a provision in the census that say, could you be counted in another household elsewhere? And most of the college students are gonna get counted in their
At
parents' home.
right.
So then I wonder whether those kids are excluded from that list.
They would be, yeah. I mean, I think this is, isn't there something on there that says by 2020 census?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I feel like this information is important, and for nothing else, it's in one report for us to access, so we don't have to go dig up these numbers elsewhere for us to make informed decisions as well. So,
I just know that, especially being a college community, we can use the data and the numbers from the college when it sometimes suits our needs and sometimes we don't. And I'm just putting that out there.
I mean,
And I just wanted to add, like, I'm just like, it's advisable to consider how sustainable it is to build high-density, subsidized, low-income housing. And it's as if that is what workforce housing is, which by definition is
I find
really
that-
misleading.
Yeah, I find that to be.
I mean, really,
problematic.
workforce is median and below, which includes like low-income and,
Right,
but I
but
mean,
it also means
it's
affordable
also
to
median,
right?
yeah.
And I think part of the problem, and I was gonna mention that when you brought that up at the housing committee meeting, how everybody was interpreting that word. And from the housing committee meeting that I went to in Manchester, I talked to a couple of the keynote speakers, and a couple of them are like, yeah, the word workforce housing is this huge spread of what it means. And it really is misleading, and we need another definition for part of it.
Income
And,
qualified.
and then maybe another word, rather than
Right.
workforce housing, another word for the part that's income-based or subsidized. And I'm not sure when that will change, but I think that will solve a lot of the
Well,
problems.
I was just disappointed that this came from the director of the LRPC.
I didn't talk, he was no, I didn't talk to him.
Anyhow.
To the other
He
speakers.
was the main author of that.
Throwing him under the
website.
bus.
He's a really
Hey.
smart guy. Okay.
Side conversations.
Sorry. Mr. Chair.
Sorry.
All right,
Using your gavel, aren't you?
Where is it?
Oh, yeah.
it must be getting late. All right, so it sounds like there's not really full consensus, but it seems like more than not want to say include it.
Honestly, I'd like to see it in there, because it's data, it's information, it doesn't really have any
Okay.
bearing on, it has no bearing on anything really, except it's more information in the report.
Okay, thank you. I have a feeling I know how it's going to go on Monday, but I'll say my piece.
You have our support.
Yeah. Capital improvements program discussion.
We just got our spreadsheets today, and we're meeting next week, so we start our meetings, I think we have a couple of them a week for a bit.
Okay.
Did we use the same
So-
format as last year?
Yes.
Awesome. Good.
At our last meeting, we talked about having a discussion prior to a public hearing, perhaps at our next work session. Do you want to put the timeline back to this point, or do you want to stay with that?
I don't know that we have an answer to that, do we?
Yeah, so our meetings, the currently scheduled upcoming two meetings of the committee are the 24th and the 30th of October. And so that brings, if the 30th is the date when the CIP committee decides it's done, then theoretically, if we post the public hearing early enough, we could have it on the 2nd, but the board wouldn't have had a chance to really probably talk
So-
about it yet.
It sounds like the best solution would be to put this back on the agenda for our next meeting, to have another discussion, and then we'll decide then what the timeline is, maybe.
We should know something by then. I mean, we haven't really even met with everybody with this. We just barely got the information.
There's no harm in putting it on the agenda, and then
And they're gonna kick it down from there.
I
We-
can
could
just
just be an
say the same
update.
thing again.
We can get an update whether
Okay.
it's done or not.
Sounds
you
good.
could say we're making great progress, but I have nothing
We
to
are making
report at this
great
moment.
progress. We're all gonna know each other next week.
I will mention that as well, the Economic Development Cluster Project had its first on-campus meeting earlier this week, and I invited just Scott Whedon to represent the town at that meeting. I will hopefully tomorrow be sending a meeting out to the members of the town team to start a discussion, and then hopefully shortly after that have a larger sprawling meeting with everyone to kind of get things moving. Because just to let you know, on the town side, for those of you like Mike who might be on this, and Joseph, from the university side, I mean, we're imagining a kickoff coming in for actually teaching projects and stuff like that in next fall, which seems really far away. However, from a university planning perspective, by early spring semester, which means February, we need to know what we're teaching next fall. So we need to kind of figure out now already exactly what we're going to be doing for this, so we can be ready to do it and have it in our course catalog for next fall. So it probably seems kind of a slack time frame from the town's perspective, but from an academic perspective, it's creeping up on us fast. Anyway, so those of you involved, you'll have an email from me probably tomorrow about this.
Thank you, John.
All right. Public comments.
Thanks, you had a very good meeting tonight, and no other comments.
I won't force you to come up.
Are you speaking for both members of the public?
And the board appreciates the public.
Okay.
Can I do it? Can I do it? Damn it. Still got more on the agenda?
No, you may.
No, I'm not gonna do it.
I'm not going to do it either.
You can stay here.
I make a motion to adjourn. I'll do it.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
All right. Meeting is adjourned.